Well, first off, I just want to thank you guys for having me here today. If I pull out my phone and look at it, it's because I have certain quotes and stuff screenshotted on it, so I'm not texting, I promise. So yes, as Will said, whenever he asked me to do this, I was incredibly nervous. I have not been in a church for 3.5, 4 years probably, right around the time that I left college. I was raised at, a lot of you probably have heard of Franklin Road Christian School at Murfreesboro. They're a rather big Christian school. That's where I went to school from K-5 to, well, not from K-5 on, but I went to a school similar from that. From K-5 on to graduating, I then went to Pensacola Christian College in Florida for a little while. That was incredibly strict and hard to deal with the rules there, so I left there after 2 weeks of only being there and decided to go to another Christian university that I ended up liking a lot more. I decided to go to Lee University, which is in Cleveland, Tennessee. That's where I have my theater degree from. I really, really enjoyed my time at Lee. But through all this, I was actually raised incredibly strictly independent Baptist. For those of you who don't know what independent Baptist is, it's probably, in my personal experience, it's one of the strictest denominations of Christianity. It's all about of rules of what not to do. They focus a lot on what you shouldn't do, not so much on what you should do. So that was kind of how I was raised. So yeah, whenever he first asked me, would you like to come speak at my church, I thought, I'm not really allowed in a lot of churches. They don't like my opinions. So yeah, I was a little nervous. I think I was with Eric Peterson, another friend of ours, and I laughed at first, and I said, Eric, you're not going to believe what WT just asked me. He asked me if I can speak at a church, and Eric laughed for a few seconds, and he was like, well, you know, tell him about yourself. And then he replied with that, and I thought, okay. Now I said yes based purely on him describing the church to me. Curiosity. I thought I have got to see what these people are about, because this is something that sounds right up my alley. And I suspect after being here just now, I already feel like I'll probably be back. But I also had to do this just because WT's so ferocious in his character. I was afraid saying no to him. He might actually kill me. If you guys come see the show, you'll see just how scary he is. So yes, no was not an option after I did that. But I've been doing theater since I was 4 years old, guys. That's how I know WT. That's why I love this show so much. The first show I did was this weird World War II orphan type show that had a lot of Christian overtones to it as well. I don't remember much about it as I was 4 years old. But the next year I went and got to go see The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe performed here at South Jackson, actually, through a program that they had the kids from different schools in the area come in and watch. I think this would have been around 96 or so, 97, something like that. They had the show go on there that time, and I fell in love. That from right on then on, I wanted to do theater. I knew I wanted to be one of those people on the stage. I loved the idea of escapism, of being able to be somebody that you weren't, to step into somebody else's shoes, to empathize for them. Empathy is a big thing in my life, guys. That's one of the traits that I feel like I have a pretty good hold on, is empathy for feeling for other people. So acting kind of came to me through seeing Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and seeing all these themes come across on stage and wanting to portray them for other people. So, let's see. When we're talking about the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, obviously it is a very, very Christian emphasized book. However, I think there are themes that we can all take from it that don't necessarily have to be, you don't have to be a Christian to get these things out of it. So I'll talk a little bit about those. But I want to talk to you guys a little bit about the origin of the story. So at age 16, C.S. Lewis, the author of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, for any of you who are not familiar with C.S. Lewis, he was friends with J.R.R. Tolkien. He was friends with a lot of those big authors of that time. He's one of the most quoted authors of all time, actually. He has a lot of great quotes about just anything you can think of. C.S. Lewis has a quote for it. Studying for this, I came across a website that had like 300 C.S. Lewis quotes, one for like everything you could think of. It was nuts. But at age 16, he got this picture in his head of a fawn. For those of you who don't know what a fawn is like a half goat, half man. So it's a goat from the half the torso down, and then the torso up is a man. So he had this idea of a fawn with parcels in his hand and an umbrella running through wooded snows, the snowy wooded area. But he could never really get past that. He just had this idea from the age of 16 all the way up to the age of 40. Now, when he was 40, this would have been in 1939, he took in 3 kids that were leaving London because of the World War II Nazi Germany bombings that were going to start happening on London. They moved out to his home, the Kilns, where he lived out in the English countryside. Their names were Margaret, Mary, and Catherine, and he invited them into his home. Now this is very reminiscent, guys, of The Professor in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. The show actually starts, and the book starts with the kids leaving World War II London to go live in the English countryside with an old professor. It's pretty straightforward. A lot of his allegories are, there's not a whole lot of ease to mix it up about what he's talking about. He's pretty straightforward with it, which, funny enough, J.R.R. Tolkien actually kind of got in his face a little bit about that. He said, you can't be this upfront about your allegories. Like, nobody will like this. They'll be mad at you. They'll think you're trying to indoctrinate people. He was wrong. People loved it. I mean, now he was right in his sense. Of course, his world's totally different. It worked for him too. It's 2 totally different things. But he was wrong about Lewis not being able to get it sold. Now he claimed that these children who came to live with him gave him a new outlook on life. Before this, C.S. Lewis, he has a lot of talk about loving, not love into one another, but love with man and woman, so to speak. For him, he did not like women very much. He claims that it made him too vulnerable whenever he would love someone like that. So he never had kids because he felt like it was a vulnerability that he didn't want to have. So he never allowed himself to love people like that, which I think is kind of sad that he was never able to experience that. But these kids helped him kind of get past that a little bit in his later life. So he was about 40 years old, and he had trouble for the longest time, though. He started working on it that summer whenever the kids got there with him, but he had trouble for the next 6 or 7 years trying to actually get this thing penned down onto pen and paper, until he had a dream of Aslan the lion. So this is where some people start to say that it was divinely inspired by God. Take that as you will. If you think so, then that's great. I actually think that obviously he took a story that he knew related to a lot of people. For me, the Bible relates to me still. Like even though I'm an atheist now these days, but I still read the Bible. I've read the Bible several times, and there's still some great life truths that you can get through that. There's great life truths that you can get through any religious text, just about. So he took this Bible and he thought, all right, now I have this lion that comes through. Who can I relate him to with the Bible? Aslan becomes Jesus, right? So then he starts going through and trying to relate these characters to the Bible, and he finds that it's a lot easier for him to write this story now. That's why it's so similar to the Christian crucifixion of Jesus stories, because it was actually easier for him to write that way because he knew that story so well and it helped relate to him. So he dedicated this book to his goddaughter Lucy Barfield. That's important because of the character later on. Her name's Lucy. Now, it received mass critical and commercial success, obviously, but it did not at first. Critics were about the same as J.R.R. Tolkien. They said they thought that he was trying to indoctrinate children, that they would not like the battle scenes. No, this is true. I read a lot of the critics said this, that they thought the kids would hate the battle scenes, which obviously you watch any kids movie now and it's got some huge fantasy epic battle in it. So they were definitely wrong about that. And the children let them know that. The moment that it was released to the public in 1950, it released a critical success with children, and the critics kind of changed their tone after they saw that it sold so well. It was like, oh, never mind, let's jump on the bandwagon. But actually, so between 1949, he finished it in March of 1949, but he actually wrote all 3 of the Narnia books that involve the Pevensey kids, the 4 children that are the stars of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. He wrote all 3 of the other books along with it before Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe was even published in 1950. So once he finally got that Aslan creature and everything into it, it came quick. He just loaded it all out there really fast. Now, I want to talk about, obviously, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe has some very direct allegories to the Christ crucifixion. So, how many of you have actually read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, seen the movie, you know the story? Most of you. Okay. So I'll give you a very brief description, I hope it's brief, of the story. So, we have all the main characters here. We have Aslan, the White Witch, Lucy, Edmund, Susan, and Peter, who are the only 4 humans that exist within Narnia. We have Mr. and Mrs. Beaver, Unicorn and Centaur, Tumnus, Fenris Ulf, the Dwarf, Father Christmas, Elf, and the White Stag, and then all of Aslan's followers and the Witch's followers. The story starts, guys, like I said, with World War II, Germany. The kids are obviously, actually the movie starts with them having to go into a bomb shelter while the bombs are hitting and then leaving and going out to the countryside. When they get to the countryside, they visit they're staying out with this old professor who has this huge mansion, right? That's very old enough that there's not closets, there's wardrobes in it, in every room. So Lucy actually, they're playing hide and seek, and she finds this room that has nothing in it but this incredibly well done, ornate wardrobe. Nothing else in the room. So she goes in there to hide. She opens the wardrobe, kind of gets in with the furs and stuff, and starts backing up into it, and starts to feel thorns, like branches and stuff, instead of fur coats. She turns around and realizes that she is no longer in a wardrobe. She is in an entirely different universe, the Narnia. She walks out and sees, you guessed it, a fawn carrying a bunch of parcels and an umbrella in a snowy wooded area. This is Mr. Tumnus. Mr. Tumnus takes Lucy and takes her back to his home, Tumnus Towers. He wasn't very, he didn't get too hardcore. It's very much a children's book. That's why things are so simplistically done like that. But he takes her back to Tumnus Towers and explains to her that the White Witch has had rule of Narnia for the past 100 years. She keeps it always winter, but never Christmas, which is about the worst thing that I can think of somebody doing, is making you suffer through all the cold and never getting any presents for it. I'm kidding. But yeah, so she's obviously very evil. She's taken over Narnia, and she's held control with this magic staff that she has, and she abides by this old law, or Old Testament, of this old, very strict laws of eye for an eye, these sorts of things. We'll get into that in just a second. But Tumnus then tells her that he is actually a secret agent of the witch, but has had a change of heart through his friendship with her and does not want to turn her in. So he leads her back to the lamppost and says, okay, go back, find your brothers and sisters, never return to Narnia. It's not safe for you here. And then he leaves. As he's leaving and Lucy escapes, we have Will's character enter, WT's character, Fenris Ulf. Fenris Ulf does not, he is watching Tumnus let Lucy go. And he's not happy about that because Fenris Ulf is the secret police captain he's basically the second in command to the witch. He's a little bit more ferocious, I think, actually, a little more directly evil than the witch. The witch is more of a looming presence, and Fenris is a very direct threat to everybody. So Fenris takes Tumnus, burns his house, takes him back to the witch, where he's then turned into a stone statue. So, yeah, Fenris was not happy with him. So Lucy goes back. The kids do not believe her about Narnia, but eventually she's able to convince Edmund, her youngest brother, to go in with her to the wardrobe. Edmund finds the witch. The moment he gets in the wardrobe, he leaves. He just pieces out, leaves Lucy to go find Mr. Tumnus. It's kind of odd. It's not really explained well. But he goes out on his own, and the witch finds him. The witch is out in her sleigh. So the witch and the dwarf find Edmund. She offers Edmund Turkish delight, very reminiscent of how the serpent in the Garden of Eden hands Eve the apple from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. It's very, very reminiscent of that. Once he takes that, he now has committed sin, basically, is the idea. And from then on, he has this, it's described as almost a spell in the book that comes over him because of the Turkish delight, that he has gluttony and he wants more and more of it, and he'll do anything to get more. She says, okay, I want you to bring your brothers and sisters to me. This is because there's a prophecy that she just wants to keep from happening, that will keep her from, she's basically representative of Satan. And Aslan is representative of Jesus. And it is said that when 4 humans come to Narnia, that Aslan will return, will take out the great white witch, and will return peace to Narnia. So whenever she sees a human, she knows that's probably not a good sign of things to come. So she wants Edmund to bring them in before Aslan can get a hold of them or anything, bring them straight to her, so that she's able to turn them to stone statue, kill them, whatever it is that she needs to do to get rid of them. So Edmund leaves, tries to go convince his brothers and sisters. Eventually they all come back to the wardrobe. He does not tell them about seeing the witch because I think deep down he kind of knows that she's probably a little cruel, but he's under her spell. So they all return to Narnia, and before Edmund is able to convince them to go to the White Witch's castle, Mr. Beaver enters. Mr. Beaver is kind of reminiscent of the church members of the church is what I kind of take him as. He finds the kids when they're lost in the woods, and he leads them to Aslan. So it's pretty direct, I think. he actually finds the kids, and he, not knowing them at all or anything like that, he decides, I want to help you guys, and he tells them about the prophecy. And I think I have the page written down here. It's, give me just a second. Yes, it is, right? All right, so Mr. Beaver tells them the prophecy. Wrong will be right when Aslan comes in sight. At the sound of his roar, sorrows will be no more. When he bares his teeth, winter will meet its death, and when he shakes his mane, we shall have spring again. I have to say again because it's supposed to rhyme. When Adam's flesh and Adam's bones sit at Cair Paravel throne, the evil time will be over and done. So he tells them the prophecy. While he's telling that prophecy, Edmund sneaks off again, kind of pieces out from his brothers and sisters, and goes back to find the witch. When he gets to the witch, she is not happy about the fact that he came back empty-handed with nobody there with him. She does not give him any of the Turkish delight. In fact, she binds him and whips him across and makes him lead her sleigh along with her bears. So it's pretty gruesome what she does to him. But she has a total switch in who she is after that point. But, so this goes on. Mr. Beaver gets the kids over to Aslan's army finally, the 3 remaining ones. Aslan enters. The kids, the moment that they see him, they describe a feeling of peace that comes over them, a feeling of faith is what it's supposed to be like. They can feel the faith in what they're getting from him. So Aslan tells them, there's supposed to be 4 of you. Where's the 4th one? They say, okay, he's betrayed us kind of. Aslan says, don't worry about that. Don't worry about what will happen. Your brother will come back. So Fenris Ulf then enters the camp ahead of his witch's army. The witch is now on her way to meet Aslan. She thinks, okay, Aslan's back now. I've got to confront this head on. We have to have a fight now. So that kind of leads me into my first theme of good versus evil, portrayed by the White Witch and Aslan. White Witch is actually described as, do any of you know who Lilith was in relation to the Bible? Okay. So a lot of people don't know the story of Lilith. Just very quickly, Lilith was the first wife of Adam. Well, at least according to some versions of the Bible. She did not actually want to be subservient to man. All the kids are gone, right? Yeah. So what actually happened was during sex she wanted to be on top of Adam. She did not want to be underneath him. And she thought, yeah. And so but according to Adam, that meant that would kind of demean him. So he didn't want that. She wanted to be on equal footing with him. And he did not want that. So she betrayed him and became a demon, is basically how the story goes. And it's actually explained that the White Witch is directly Lilith's daughter. So that's why she gets her powers. She's demonic. She is not a human. She appears as a human, but she is not one. So she is very directly reminiscent of sin and evil and demonic stuff. Aslan being Jesus. We'll show exactly why he's Jesus here in a second. But we have very clear villains and good guys in this book throughout the whole thing. All of them come together in huge literal battles against each other with good versus bad in the end, very much like Revelation. But anyway, so the White Witch is here with Aslan. She says, hey, I have a right to Edmund's blood based on the law of old because he betrayed you guys, and he has to die because of that. So Aslan comes, he says, hey, let me holler at you over here for a second away from everybody. and they go over here and they have a talk. What happens during that is that Aslan is convincing the White Witch that to take his life instead of Edmund's, to do the ultimate sacrifice and the ultimate show of love. He wants to replace Edmund's life with his. So she agrees. They go back, and Aslan tells everybody that the witch has just renounced her claim on the blood, and that all's good and well. They all cheer, but Aslan appears very depressed, much like how Jesus is depressed before he goes to the cross, and I think it's the Garden of no. Is it Garden of Gethsemane? Yeah. It is? Okay. Yeah. So in the Garden of Gethsemane, whenever Jesus is talking about how depressed he is, he's praying to his Father and trying to get encouragement for what he's about to do, trying to get the courage up to do what he's about to do. It's very reminiscent of that. So he tells everybody, go ahead, go prepare for this battle, go get ready to fight the witches' war. I have to wait here, I have stuff to do. Everyone leaves except Susan and Lucy, who hide and kind of want to see what's going on with Aslan because they get this feeling that something's wrong. Well, shortly after, the White Witch's army returns. Aslan goes with them completely willingly, allows them to tie him up, allows them to humiliate him, to shave his mane, to insult him in every way you can think of. All of this he does 100% willingly, shows absolutely no effort to try and stop them. So he dies. The White Witch kills him on the stone table. Now, just like how when Jesus dies, the veil is torn in the tabernacle, the veil is torn, the stone table cracks after the White Witch leaves. Aslan's body disappears, and Susan and Lucy come back and they're trying to find him, very much like how Mary and Martha, thank you. Mary and Martha, much how Mary and Martha go to find Jesus' body and find an empty tomb, right? And they're kind of like, oh, what happens? Then all of a sudden he's there behind them, Aslan the Great Lion. He talks to them about how there is this new magic that replaces the old magic. So Old Testament, New Testament. There's this new magic that will replace the old magic based on his love and sacrifice for Edmund. So it's a little bit different in that he's not sacrificing himself for the whole of Narnia, he's just sacrificing himself for Edmund, but you can see the direct allegory there and how similar it is. And actually, I keep saying allegory because it's easier for me, but C.S. Lewis calls them supposal stories. He actually says that this takes place in the real world alongside of it, basically. So this is a world, like a parallel universe alongside our world, where Jesus comes there in the form of a lion. It's actually not in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, but I think it's Prince Caspian, where Aslan says that he exists, and he tells the children, I exist in your world under another name that is, some of you may call me a lamb instead of a lion. Oh, wow. So it's incredibly direct at who he is, in case you didn't pick up on it at that point. He just wants to let you know. So Aslan comes back. He is able to go fight and help Peter and the rest of the forces of Narnia go against the witch. Edmund is able to break the witch's wand and destroy her magic, and Aslan is able to defeat her. The 4 kids are then crowned. Everybody lives happily ever after, right? So that's the brief overview of it. Now let me give you guys some themes on it, and I promise I'll stop ranting. So these are themes that I think that we can all take that are universal truths. I just kind of told you guys the Christian allegories of it and stuff now, but these are things that I think anybody can take from The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, things that I take from it, things that I'm hoping come across in my show when I direct it here. If you guys get to come see it Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
What time?
7:30 or 7, I think. I will tell you. I will Google it, and I will tell you in the talkback.
I'm going to be there regardless of the time. So.
Yeah, I'll go either way before that, but it's something like along those lines. So the first thing that we talked about, good versus evil. Now, next I want to talk about betrayal. That's Edmund's betrayal of his brothers and sister and his family. It's very important that it's his family and not just his friends. I think with the betrayal, because every one of us have almost betrayed, we've betrayed somebody at some point. All of us are imperfect, right? But it's harder, I think, to betray family than it is to betray friends. At least in my experience, because you have that, I don't even know how to describe it, but you all know whenever someone's actually blood related to you, there's that sense of you can't abandon them, you can't let that happen, even no matter, regardless of what they do. And that happens with friendship too sometimes, maybe we have kindred spirits and stuff, but we'll talk about that a little bit too. Now Edmund runs into the White Witch on his first trip into Narnia, and she offers him the Turkish delight. Now he's under the spell of her sin, right? That causes him to betray his brothers and sisters. But what's really important that we take away from the betrayal is forgiveness and how to forgive somebody. It's not so much about what he did, it's about how we can forgive him and how forgiveness can help us, and not just him. So Aslan actually says to the Pevensey kids, talking about Edmund, after he goes off and talks to Edmund for a little while and comes back, he says, "Here is your brother. There is no need to talk to him about what is past." Now, all of you know that holding a grudge against somebody can be incredibly poisonous for you, and I'm pulling up quotes, sorry. But, holding a grudge doesn't make you strong, it makes you bitter. Forgiving doesn't make you weak, it sets you free. And Wikipedia, gives the definition of forgiveness as, forgiveness is the intentional and voluntary process by which a victim undergoes a change in feelings and attitude regarding an offense. They let go of negative emotions such as vengefulness, with an increased ability to wish the offender well. So I really like that. That's why I got screenshotted that, because I think that's a pretty good way to describe forgiveness. And I have a quote that kind of goes along with with letting things go for yourself. The truth is, unless you let it go, unless you forgive yourself, unless you forgive the situation, unless you realize the situation is over, you cannot move forward. So, forgiveness is obviously for the other person too. Whenever somebody asks if you can forgive them for something, they want some forgiveness too, so they feel better about stuff. But you really have to forgive and forget. Not just, if you just say, oh, it's okay, but I'm going to remember that the rest of my life. You're always going to kind of hold that in, and that relationship's never going to be able to grow. You're never going to be able to get past that. So forgiving and forgetting is important. Like Aslan said, let it go. Don't talk to him about what is past. And we've all had things that have happened in the past. We've all had to forgive people for harsh things. Some of us, I'm sure, especially for me at least, there's things that you still have a hard time forgiving and forgetting, and I still have to work on forgiving. And that happens all the time, and sometimes it's not so easily done. Edmund forgave himself, and along with his brothers and sisters forgiving him, and he was able to move forward and do great things for Narnia, including being the one who broke the witch's wand and stopped all the magic that was keeping people in stone statues and keeping them frozen and keeping down Narnia, keeping Christmas away from coming. Edmund actually is the one, despite his fact that he betrayed everybody in the beginning, he's able to transform, which kind of leads me to my next point, transformation. After you forgive yourselves, guys, it's important that you take a look at yourself. And I think the best way to do this is to take a look, sit down, look in the mirror, and decide what you want. And this is something that I'm doing a lot right now. This has kind of been my summer journey at the moment, is centering myself is what I like to call it. I listen to Jordan Peterson a lot. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of Jordan Peterson. He's a professor in Toronto that does a lot of talks and stuff. I consider him almost a philosopher. He has some stuff that I don't agree with him on. There's some social issues that he's kind of a little more conservative leaning on. But there's a lot of things about spirituality, about personal growth and things that you can take from him that are amazing. And one of those things that he really talks about is learning to center yourself, learning to find out who you are, having the courage to change who you are if you don't like it, and become something that you like. So I want to give you guys kind of hit some steps that he has written down. So, see yourself outside of yourself. That's the first step to transforming yourself. See how other people look at you. This has been kind of hard for me. Basically what I did is I went around to my friends and I said, I want you to be 100% honest with me. What can I change? What are my flaws? Like if you were looking at me or whatever, what would you say I need to work on? What would you say I need to change? And whenever you start asking questions like that to people and start asking questions like that to yourself, you start to figure out the things you don't like. And a good way to do that if you can't figure out what you don't like is figure out what you do like and then go from there. Now find the habit associated with the thing that you want to change. So for me, I've been trying to be a lot more open-minded towards things because once I became an atheist, whenever I was in college, a lot of atheists like to become anti-theists the moment they become an atheist. And they don't have to go hand in hand like that. They like to kind of fight against, and I think it's because they feel mistreated by religion. There is reasoning a lot of the times behind it. But people tend to do that. They tend to want to become an anti-theist. Now, so for me, I had to see that thing in myself where it was like a hate. It was like a hate that I was holding in myself towards religion. I had to see that and think, okay, I need to be more open-minded to other people's opinions on things. I can't be so closed-minded and think, nope, I already have it figured out, because I'm only 23. I don't have anything figured out. So you find the habit that you're associated with the thing you want to change, and you start to change it there. Now you have to practice that every day, no matter what. And you have to forgive yourself again whenever you fail at that. But you have to always be consistent in thinking about that. You have to set realistic goals for yourself. So things like, I'm not going to be impatient anymore. All right? So yeah. Well, yes, you are. You actually help yourself by acknowledging that something's a bad habit, though. And it won't be solved immediately. It's never going to happen that way. You have to work every single day and think, I'm impatient, let me just be a little more patient today. So pick a little thing, like if you're that person who gets mad when you're standing in line, just do like a weird meditation or something while you're in line a few times. I know, road rage. Road rage is a bad one for me. I had to drive to Murfreesboro and back all through high school because that's where I went to school and I lived here. So road rage was a big thing like that for me, where I would get angry fast. So that was something that I had to work on, listening to calming music while I drove and things like that. You find things like that will help you transform. Constantly look in the mirror. look at yourself. It's like that scene from Taxi Driver where Robert De Niro's, "You talking to me?" He's looking in the mirror. You do that, really do that. I talk to myself in the mirror. I know it sounds crazy, but I do. I talk to myself looking in the mirror like, this is something that you need to work on, Zach. This is something. It helps when you see that. When you see a visual you talking to yourself, there's something about that helps, that'll help you change. Surround yourself with people who will tell you the truth. So like I just told you guys earlier about my friends, I was able to go to them. That's because I only have like 3 or 4 friends. But they're all truthful to me. All of them are truthful. They will all tell me if I ask them something, and sometimes even when I don't ask them. And that's a good friend. A good friend will do things like that. But and I'll get a little bit more into friendship in just a second. But also you have to take risks, guys. You'll never become the person you want to be by continuing to be the person that you currently are. So you have to kind of have the courage to change. You have to be, okay, I might fail at this, but I'm going to try it anyway. You have to have that kind of thought and mentality about it. So that's transformation. The next thing I want to talk about is courage. Courage is represented by Peter, for the most part. Peter, I bet you can guess what Bible character he relates to. Best friend of the Aslan the lion, leads his army after he leaves. Peter. He's supposed to be Simon Peter. But his courage is demonstrated by his leading everybody into battle. To begin with, whenever Fenrisulf comes to the Aslan's encampment, Peter kind of draws his sword and is shaking it out and stuff, and Fenris actually laughs at him. Has a good moment of, this guy is so afraid of me, shaking in his boots. But courage is not being afraid of something. It's being afraid of something and doing what you're supposed to do anyway, despite that.
Right.
So, and it actually, there's a couple definitions of courage. One is the ability to do something that frightens oneself. But what I actually like is also, I've written upside down, sorry. Strength in the face of pain and grief. I like that definition a little more. So Peter sees that he might die, right? He's never held a sword before in his life, but he knows he wants to protect his brothers and sisters. He wants to have the courage to be someone that he's not already, to transform. So he pulls the sword, he goes in the face of adversary anyway, and he goes forward, and guess what? He wins. WT has to die. Sad day. It is, it's a sad day. But we must have the courage, guys, to, as we were talking about a little bit earlier, we have to have courage. It takes a lot of courage to forgive yourself and to forgive other people and to look at yourself to transform. That takes a lot of courage about taking risks and everything like that. We have to have the courage to forgive ourselves for our faults, just like Edmund did. We have to have the courage to love ourselves for who we are and who we want to be. And that's not always easy. I was diagnosed at the age of 15 with bipolar disorder. That was kind of the descent down after that, when the religion stopped kind of working for me, because I thought, okay, well, I actually got mad at first. My initial reaction was to get angry. Like, okay, well, thanks God, that's fantastic. I've done nothing but do all these great things, and now I have this. For those of you who don't, I'm sure you all know what bipolar disorder is, but it's for me, it manifests as more depression and things like that. A lot of self-doubt and things of that nature. So that's not how it is for everybody. I'm type 3. There's 3 types it's argued about with psychiatrists. Now they're considering maybe talking about it as a spectrum, which I think is a little bit better. But currently I'm called type 3 bipolar disorder, and I was diagnosed with that at the age of 15. Now that took, at first I was afraid. My initial reaction was to be afraid of who I was, to be afraid of every thought that I had. Is this thought something that I have, or is this thought something that's because of a disease that I have? So that was kind of, it was a really big thing to battle with at the age of 15 and not really have a whole lot of people to talk about it to. So it was, I had to have a lot of courage, I guess, to find my center, to kind of find out who I was, who I wanted to be, and not let something like that hold me back. So that can be, I know I'm probably not even the only bipolar person in this room, if I had to guess, because it's like they said, it's becoming like a spectrum now at this point. Like there's so many people that can fall on it. But that's how it manifested for me, and it took a lot of courage and a lot of therapy to get to where I am. But yeah, I eventually, about the age of 17 or 18, I decided that I was an atheist, but that didn't mean that I had no hope for myself or anything, that I could find courage through other people, that I could find courage and encouragement, even from the Bible still, if I wanted to. I could find it from anything, as long as I have an open mind towards other people and towards other things. And that takes a lot of courage, being an open-minded person, because you don't like to get your toes stepped on. And sometimes when people have ideas about things, it's like, you're right, but I don't want to hear that. Because then you have to work on it and stuff like that. That happened all the time in church, for me at least, growing up. The next point, guys, is the importance of friendship and family in the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. When tragedy, Jordan Peterson talks about, if you're not centered and you don't have a good support group, when tragedy hits, you will lose yourself. So, kindred spirits are kind of the first thing. Lucy and Tumnus immediately take to each other whenever they get into Narnia, and it's so immediate that it actually changes Tumnus from being a secret agent and helping her escape, right? So have you ever had those people, I know you have, the kindred spirits is what I call it, where it's someone that the moment you meet them, you're like, I click with them. That person gets it, I feel their vibe. WT was like that for me whenever we met during Rent. I think so. So we met during Rent, and it was that way. Like, I think it was at the first rehearsal, we sat and talked for like 35, 40 minutes after, just immediately. Like, it was so easy, like we've been friends forever, not a problem. And it's because of kindred spirits, people like that you're just able to click with. Sometimes those people can even live far away. With the world that we live in now, you're able to connect to people all over the universe, or like all over the planet, not universe. That would be cool. One day maybe. But we thrive on that feeling of connection, guys, with each other. That feeling that we get from kindred spirits. And I think Mr. Beaver is another good example of friendship. He leads the kids when they're lost, and a good friend's always like that, right? Whenever you're lost, whenever you're down, whenever something's going wrong, a good friend can kind of help you get back to your center, find yourself again. They can even sometimes just by listening to you. I know, for instance, with me, I wouldn't be alive if it weren't for the friendship that I have with my friend Aaron Gordon. He's not with us today because he is with us. He's not here today. Wow. He's not here today. He was feeling sick, but he was actually going to be here. He helped me write some of this. But he specifically, he is alive, I promise. But whenever I was living in Cleveland, I got engaged when I was in college, right? So I talked about having bipolar disorder a little bit earlier. That engagement did not go well. Obviously, since she left. She went to Florida to be with someone else. Yeah, sad, but that's okay. It's not sad now. But yeah. So whenever that happened, I turned to drugs and alcohol hardcore. I had already experimented a little bit with drugs in college, like everybody did. But when that happened, it was no longer experimentation. It was just straight up, I'm going to do this now. So I had my friend Aaron Gordon, who kind of started to realize that something was wrong with me. Now, he's living 4.5 hours away from me at this point. Remember that. It's important to remember he is not with me. He is not seeing what's happening. But he can tell something's wrong with me. Just from text messages and things like that, he can tell something's going on. So he actually quits his job, comes to Cleveland where I am, and I hope I don't cry while I talk about it, but he comes to Cleveland where I was, and stayed with me for weeks. Like, just stayed in my house, cleaned up after me and stuff like that. Just took care of me. It was really, really great. But friends like that are able to pull you out of those dark times, right? He was able to help me get off all of the stuff that I was on without having to send me anywhere to any kind of rehab or anything. He just did it purely out of his love for him, his love for me. So friends make sure that you're not left behind. And they help you grow and transition as a person. And then lastly, guys, I want to talk about love and sacrifice. Aslan sacrifices himself for Edmund, and for really kind of for all of them in a way, but directly for Edmund. Love literally means a feeling of deep affection for someone, but I prefer to look at it as an action instead of a feeling. Love is a verb, if any of you have ever heard that song. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like that. So love to me is how you treat the other people around you. It's something that you show to people like that. And C.S. Lewis kind of agreed with me. He said, love is not an affectionate feeling, but a steady wish for the loved person's ultimate good as far as it can be obtained. So he kind of agreed with me on that. And love and sacrifice, I think, go hand in hand, like what we were just talking about with Aaron. He quit his job, moved up with me for 4.5 hours into my house for a while, 4.5 hours away, and just stayed there with me for weeks. Sacrificed a lot of his own personal stuff just because he didn't want to see me die. And that's same as the Aslan, like same as a good friend. Any good friend will do it. I'm sure some of you have the same types of things. I'm sure I'll hear some of that in talkbacks and stuff, and that would be fantastic. But the sacrifice stems from our love for someone. So let me wrap it up a little bit because I know I'm ranting. But in closing, despite all the heavy allegories and all the Christian things that are in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, it is a story about overcoming one's own setbacks, one's own fears, letting love rule your life, which is a true thing regardless of what religion you might prescribe to, or religion or race or whatever. That's love is, I think, the ultimate takeaway, and that's kind of what I want my show to show is ultimate love and sacrifice. So thank you guys for letting me be here today. Sorry that I kept going a little long. But yeah, thank you guys. Appreciate you.